Hello, welcome to MiG-21 Startup, Taxi, Takeoff, Air-to-Air, Air-to-Ground with Groms, these bad boys, and then a landing again in the MiG-21. Tutorial all in one area. Okay, let's do the startup. Startup I always start with cockpit because you always forget about that stuff. Make sure it's all closed and sealed. Make your way over to these three switches. These three switches are the master switches for all the electronics in the aircraft. Make sure those are on, otherwise you'll be sat here wondering why all your systems aren't coming on. Next, batteries and DC generator. Fuel pumps, three front yellow switches. Get that APU on, fire extinguisher, crack the throttle, and start the engine. There we go. After about 5 seconds, the aircraft starts to come to life. Then what you do, come to this panel here and just turn everything on. This is the subsystems for the aircraft and the weapon pylons, the guns, and the IFF, which is this little yellow switch here. This is basically turning on all your engine controls and your emergency backup systems. What would be nice to start with is radar as well. Crack that to the middle switch and that'll start to warm up. It takes about 5 minutes to do that. And then we need IFF all turned on and the RWR. Okay, now we are nearly mission capable. As you see, the aircraft has started quite rapidly. Ready for a scramble if you wish to do so. Turn on the AC generator that provides power for all the gyros and the gun system. As you see, gyros will start to come on, the nav alignment, and if we click this paper, that'll be your weapon sight. You can also use the fishnet, which is this bottom switch here, but I personally do not like to use that. So there we go. Aircraft is started and weapons ready. Switch that to radio if you want to get rid of that annoying static. Okay. Now we will shift to the weapons. Up on the left means air to air. Down means air to ground. Up means IR. Down means radar missiles for the air to air stuff. Okay. Press button number 1 to prime the weapon. Okay. And now for this, these are the rockets, dumb rockets. So for example, if you had rocket pods, 16 rockets, 8 rockets, 4 rockets. Top 2 here are for your larger dumb rockets, which will be, I forgot the name. Let's have a look really quickly. Really quickly, I said. Air to ground, air to ground, air to ground. There you go. S-24s. So for the S-24s, this will be the inner pylon 1, 2, and the outer pylon 3, 4. Moving on to the air-to-air weapons section, 3, 4 will be the outer pylons. That'll fire both racks at the same time, so you can double fire. This allows redundancy for if the enemy uses flares, and then 1, 2 does the same for the inner pylons, and then the individual pylons, which will be 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2 inner, 3, 4 outer. I don't know which side fires first. I think it goes right, left, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's all you need for the weapons. Okay, let's get 3 selected because I have 2 R60s on each of the wings. Okay, VR. Now we are ready to taxi. What I like to do before taxi is open this switch, which will be for your countermeasures. That's what you press for countermeasures, and get this gear release handle switched up in case you forget. And to set the flaps, which you can see indicated here, green. Flaps are set. Okay. So that's the aircraft started. I'm ready for any operation really. Some side notes as well. If you're carrying a center drop tank, the button for it's right there in the middle of the stick. So you can't really see it, it's behind. But you know, it's easy enough once you remember where it is. And for the drop payload, it's here. It is backwards, so inner is the outer side, and the outer is the inner side. Okay. Right. One last thing. Hold this button, and it'll align the gyro for the compass, and we're ready to go. So for taxiing in the MiG-21, about a half throttle is what you want. And as you see coming off, it starts turning on its own. So you can use the rudder to turn a little bit, tiny bit. But it doesn't really work for bigger turns. For bigger turns, you have to hold the brake. At half throttle, you have about enough power to glide for about 5 seconds with enough energy to maintain a turn. But basically, you hold the brake and use the yaw, and the aircraft will start to turn. Make sure you apply generous power. Like I said, 50% is about enough for the aircraft to taxi and to effectively turn. Unless you're in a harsh turn, you might need a bit more power, but generally it's pretty easy. Right now, bringing it onto the runway, bring it centerline, ready for a nice takeoff. Fingers crossed. Everyone gives the MiG-21 props for being the hardest plane to take off, but I beg to differ. Okay, so we've got a pretty heavy weapons load. So for most people flying like an air-to-air mission, it'll be a lot easier. Okay, and in the current state of the aircraft, there is a special afterburner mode that gives you extra power, and there is no overheating mechanic right now. So until that's changed, I would recommend, if you're new to the aircraft, to use this emergency afterburner and allow you to get off the ground. Okay, so the next steps of the flight are going to happen pretty quick. Going to accelerate to around 250. Apply pressure to the stick. When the nose starts to come up, just catch the aircraft. Hold it at a nice angle. Yeah, just try and mimic what I do. There's not really science to this, it's just all feel. When you're going, as you see there, it would go off to one side, to your previous steering angle. Here we go. About 250 now, pressure, and nose up, and we're in the air. Look at that, beautiful. About 300, gear up. Start applying the trim. And the flaps will automatically red out there, saying that they are now level. Reset the flaps to neutral, which is the front button, and then reset the flaps, because this aircraft operates off a internal gas system which is limited, and if you leave the flaps or the gear up, as you can see, the system will bleed. So left click the gear handle, put it to the middle, put the gear handle fixer, and you should be good. There you go, you've just taken off MiG-21, and as you saw, I haven't even been leaking where I'm going. This aircraft will just climb on its own out of the takeoff. The trim by default is pitch up, so nice and easy for new people to the aircraft. Okay, so now you got the aircraft flying. There's two options. You can manually trim. You can press this recovery button, which will bounce you up and down because it's not an accurate like digital system. It's got limited range of movement. But if you wait a while, it'll trim the aircraft out for you. Press the red button and it'll be generally trimmed. Like I said, it's not infinitely adjustable trim. It's got little notches, so depending on what speed you're going, it'll either fly true or you'll have to put slight stick inputs, but easy enough. Okay, let's employ the air-to-air weapons. So what we do, let's try and find an aircraft. Okay, right, we can start to look at basic radar operations. So radar, as you see, got two contacts there. Those are the two enemy aircraft. You can see them up there. There's quite a lot of vertical radar capability on this thing because it's meant for an intercept course. You can see ground effect here. So you can bring this to the middle switch to filter that out better. And this is the mod that I like to use it in all altitudes, okay? Then you have the IFF switch, which is not that one, which is this button here, IFF. A dashed line will mean enemy. 2 dashed lines is friendly. It's as simple as that. And you use a basic vertical operation of the radar, and you do the horizontal of the radar by turning the aircraft. And you lock the aircraft, there we go. Easy as that. So this is really basic radar operation. At the end of the video I'll go through all the controls that I've used for the HOTAS, but generally you'll figure it out. It's a basic aircraft, so it'll just be radar controls up down. Really basic stuff. And so as you see, we got 2 bars that are slowly coming into the center. Now this indicates the target's range relative to the maximum deployment range of the weapon. So you see here where there's little gaps in the yellow line, that's the maximum engagement range of the weapon you currently have selected, generally. But I like to get about halfway inside of this box. It expands as you get closer, and then I'll fire within that range. Let's get the burners on. Get close. Now with the radar, I've got unrealistic in the special options, MiG-21 controls. With a MiG-21 radar indication, the Pipper. So I like to use that, because why not? It's a game, not real life, so let's just make it nice and easy. As you hear, the IR sensor could detect the aircraft way before we're in range. We're getting closer now. So about 2.5 kilometers to 2 kilometers. We'll be about at the perfect launch range for these missiles. If you really wanted to, you can shoot at long range. Let's try now. 3 kilometers. There we go. Missile away. As you can see, the missile doesn't burn for the whole duration. And there we go. As easy as that. Send another one out. Let's send another one out. And you'll see the turning performance of this missile. It's alright for an older missile. Oh, there we go. Band it down. Simple air-to-air and radar operation. The radar is really limited. If you get any terrain behind it within the range of the radar, which is 30 kilometers, the bandit will fall off the scope. So you have to have the enemy above you in clear view of the sky behind it. Otherwise the radar will be spoofed by the terrain. Okay. Right, now we're gonna do basic GROM, which is the air-to-air weaponry that I've got on my aircraft. Air-to-ground, sorry. As you can see, these 2 big, thicker boys. These are really easy, so just bring it to this slot here, 1, 2. Internal pylons, the only ones that you can carry on. And this last switch, lock beam. So the symbology of the hood has changed, as you can see. And that Pipper is now, with the GROM, the air-to-ground weapon will fly. It's got roughly about a 10 kilometer range, but you need to be really good in the aircraft to utilize that range. And there's 2 ways to deploy this weapon. Either you can have it in free mode like this, where the Pipper moves where your aircraft goes, and you'll have to hold that Pipper on the target the whole way into the target. Or you can press the radar lock button, in which locks it to the terrain rather accurately. But at range, this obviously becomes difficult. To reset the lock, just turn your radar to neutral. And back on again. Okay, let's just fire the missile so then you can get an idea of the range and the speed. The MiG-21 does tilt a lot because these are big heavy missiles and there's a lot of explosive mass. As you can see, the missile has a lot of burn time, a lot of separation from the aircraft. And it's actually really good for taking out bunkers and hardened targets. As you see, the explosive mass within this weapon is substantial. That crate is pretty huge. Okay, let's blow up. Let's get a lock on something. Something else to note with this weapon system. If you pull more than, I think, 5 Gs with the Grom, the weapon will detach from the aircraft. That's one thing to keep in mind. This is an older aircraft, and for a few of the weapon systems, the pylons do detach. Okay, let's try to get a lock on this brown building. And fire the missile. As you can see, I'm not pointing directly at it, and the missile is tracking well. There we go. Building's destroyed. And as you can see, that demonstrates a large blast radius, because they destroyed the buildings behind it as well. This weapon's very effective. Okay. I think that'll be it for air-to-air, air-to-ground. These are the basics that you need to know. You can employ radar missiles, but they're really limited. And it's just as simple as doing what I did before. Using the radar, locking your target, and waiting for it to get in range. Only thing that you need to make sure, make sure this switch is down. And that's it. Your radar missiles are ready to use. They are Fox 1s. That's all you need to know. Same employment as the R60. Both the weapons release button for about 2 seconds. They'll come off the rail and head towards the radar target. While we're on the way though, we'll talk about the aircraft handling characteristics. There you go. Okay. So you've got your Gs and your AOA. Now this aircraft in recent months has got the ability to rip its wings. Okay. So you want to keep the aircraft around 6 to 7 Gs is where I like to keep it. That's living on the edge. Any more than that, you put the aircraft at high risk of A, pulling too much AOA, which will be really inefficient. More importantly, at high speeds, you'll rip your wings. Okay, so we don't want that. Now this second one, your AOA, as you can see, there is a yellow and red zone. Now the yellow zone, about 20 degrees, is where you want to keep it. That is the sweet spot for this aircraft. At high AOA turning, 20 degrees is where you want it. Anything above that, you have risk of stalling a singular wing, and you will go into a little famous MiG-21 wobble. We can try and demonstrate that. Get the aircraft nice and slow. As you can see, you can push it into the yellow, but the aircraft does not like it, loses all its speed really quick. 20 degrees, 25 degrees is nice. Let's push it into that red zone. And you get a wobble like that. And this just is not a nice wobble to have. There's pretty much no control after the point of the wobble. So you have to resume normal flight, try to get control, and get back into the turn. At this point, your bandit would have gained many degrees in the circle. As you can see, at low speed, I can't get anywhere near that 20 degrees sweet spot. There we go, got more speed. And this aircraft likes to turn at about 650 to 700 kph on here. So as you can see, I'll get 650, 700. And I can hold it about there. 18 to 20 degrees AOA. This is where the aircraft likes to sit. The nice rate. This rate you can keep up with an F5. And if we put in a bit of vertical motion, you can outrate an F5 pretty easily. Dipping down the speed obviously a little bit, but diving back in, regaining that energy. And you're able to kill F5s all day. Okay. As you can see, our fuel is down to 1000. This is our fuel gauge with the yellow circle. This by default, after rearming, gets set to the correct amount. But this is a fuel flow meter. It uses fuel flow to measure the decrease in fuel. So let's say if you drop fuel tanks early, you'll have to use this knob down here to reset it to 2900-ish, 2800. I'll put it a tiny bit below usually after you drop fuel tank. But we didn't bring any fuel tanks, so we got about 1000 kilos of fuel, which is plenty enough. Landing in this aircraft's pretty easy. It might be scary to some people because you will be running the engine at about 95 to 100% throttle at some parts of the landing to maintain speed. But if you maintain your speed correctly, there's nothing to worry about. I usually try and come in hot, drop my landing gear at 500 kph to 550. You can use the air brake. The air brake on this aircraft is really effective. It'll slow the aircraft right down. Yeah, just landing gear, flaps to full. And on the landing, maintain around 320 kph. This is about the perfect approach speed of the MiG-21. Allows you to have not too sluggish controls, and you'll be able to recover any mistakes that you make on the way down. Just go takeoff flaps. Get down. Bring our speed down. Fantastic approach by me. Get rid of that indicator. 400 kph, drop the flaps to landing flaps. Bring the throttle up to meet the extra drag. And now here we are on the approach. Maintain about 400 for the majority of the approach. Like I said before, slow down to 320 and you get relatively close, about 5 kilometers out. And as you see here, as we get slower, the AOA starts coming on. But don't worry, this aircraft can handle it. There you go. You can throttle down a little bit. Like I said, you'll be about 95% on this approach phase when you want to slow down to 90%. Those trees appeared out of nowhere, don't mind that. This is why we approach at higher speed. You're able to adjust for unforeseen events such as trees. Now we're getting ready to land here. Bring down throttle a bit more. Start seeing that speed gauge go past 350 to 320. There you go. Look how nice this approach is. Throttle up to maintain 300. Do a nice flare. Nice and gentle, and zero throttle when you get close. You come down nice. You got two options. You can hold the brakes, use the nose wheel brakes, or hold that button. You can put that on a hard toss control. Release your chute. But it's not necessary for most runways. And as you can see, the free caster on the front wheel is doing MiG-21 things. That usually happens, but it's self-correcting. You'll just have wobbles while going down the runway. Don't try and correct it, just correct for the average of the movement, if you understand what I'm saying. Don't try and correct for each wheel wobble. And again, it's just brakes to turn and yaw. Open this to drop the chute. Reset flaps, reset gear. Let's turn in. And I won't exit to the pad, but there we go. That's your full flight of the MiG-21. You've learned air-to-air, and you've learned air-to-ground. That's all you need. Let's have a look through some of the controls I have bound. So, flaps up, flaps down. Really useful for takeoff, seeing that the aircraft is a bit of a pig getting up and you want to have your head looking around the cockpit, seeing what's going on. Gear up, gear down. If you've got enough buttons, gear neutral is good. And flaps neutral, that's also good. Move on to locked beam. That's good for if you use air to ground a lot. If not, just save your buttons for air to air. Radar IFF, very good to have on a HOTAS. Wheel brakes, of course. Beam lock off, so then you can return to air to air. Radar on, radar standby. This is what you need for the radar if you want to use it for prolonged amount of time. Because after the radar's heated up, you have a limited amount of time because there is a coolant tank that does run out. It's got about a 45-minute operation time, after which point you'll have to, I think, repair your aircraft to get more coolant, or you'll have to grab a new aircraft. I don't know how DCS does it these days. Next weapon selector just makes the rotor go clockwise. Weapon release, to release the weapon. Fire guns, those two are separate on Russian aircraft. The target lock, and as I said, I don't think there is a target unlock, so you just turn the radar to standby and turn it back on. Easy as that. You've got your pitch trim, and I use one of my hotkeys for the IR missile and the radar missiles. That's a good setup to have. And then TTC range. This is for your radar to move it up and down to select distance-wise the radar target. And finally, view right, don't use that. Drop countermeasure button. That's what you need for your countermeasures. And that's it.